She walked in, tossed her keys on the counter, and said it like she was commenting on the weather. I had a date last night. Not a confession. Not an apology. Just data. Like she thought I'd say, cool, hope the service was good. Instead, I stood there in a bathrobe, holding her favorite mug, which I'd filled with her favorite coffee, just how she used to like it. Almond milk. Cinnamon. A stupid little heart I drew in the foam with a toothpick like a total idiot. A date. I blinked. Thought I misheard. I asked a what. She took off her jacket like we were roommates discussing groceries. Dinner. Wine. Conversation. A date, Curtis. Relax. Relax. She actually said relax. As if she hadn't just put a dagger between my ribs and asked me not to bleed on the carpet. She leaned on the counter like she owned the world. You've been emotionally unavailable for months. What did you expect me to do? I couldn't speak. Not because I didn't have words, because I had too many. They all choked in my throat, fighting to get out. But one line made it through. Just one. And when I said it, her smile twitched. Her breath caught for half a second. That's all it took. Because I didn't ask her who he was. I didn't beg. I didn't cry. I just said, did you tell him you still live with your husband who pays for your car, your classes, and your lies? And just like that, the look in her eyes changed. The smugness cracked. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't thrown anything. I'd said it softly, almost kindly. She didn't speak. She couldn't, because she knew what was coming next. And she had no idea how long I'd known, or how far I was willing to go. But let me rewind, just a little. Because if I want you to understand how we got to this moment, her frozen, silent, shattered, I need to show you what led to my own breaking point. And that story starts with a ring box, a canceled trip to Savannah, and a Lyft driver named Jordan who changed everything. The ring box had been sitting in my sock drawer for almost 9 months. It wasn't hers. It was mine. A reminder of what I almost did before things started unraveling. We were supposed to renew our vows in Savannah. A quiet weekend trip, just the two of us. I even booked a surprise couple spa day and found this little Airbnb with a porch swing and a clawfoot tub she once said she always wanted. But then she bailed. Said work was too overwhelming, even though she worked remote. Said she needed a weekend to think. I canceled everything. Got hit with non-refundable fees. And I spent the weekend alone, eating microwave tacos and trying to convince myself that she'd come back clearer, more loving, more us. Instead, she came back with new perfume I didn't recognize, and a phone that suddenly needed a passcode. That's when I started noticing things. She'd take her laptop into the bathroom. She'd turn off her notifications if I walked into the room. One night, I swear I saw her flinch when I reached for her phone to check the time. But I didn't want to believe it. I told myself stories to feel better. Maybe she's planning a surprise. Maybe it's a work thing. Maybe I'm just insecure. Then came the Lyft receipt. That's what broke my delusion. She forgot to log out of her account on our shared iPad. I wasn't snooping. I was literally trying to order groceries. But I saw it in her ride history. Friday night. Pick up. Our house. Drop off. The Marriott downtown. 8:47 p.m. The driver's name was Jordan. She told me she was having drinks with a former classmate. Just two girls catching up, she said. But the ride was one way. No return. No second trip home. I checked the Marriott's rooftop bar menu the next day. She was raving about a smoked old-fashioned she tried, and that drink just happened to be the specialty there. I still didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed to be sure. So I did something I'm not proud of. I created a dummy Lyft account. I messaged Jordan, the driver, pretending I left my jacket in his car. He responded within minutes, polite and helpful. I played it casual, asked about Friday's ride. Told him my sister had been picked up. Blonde, white blouse, big laugh. He remembered her immediately. Said she was headed to a date and looked nervous. She said she hadn't done anything like this in years, he added. I told her she looked great. I felt like I was going to throw up. It wasn't the cheating. Not just that. It was the effort, the lies, the cover-up, the way she looked me in the eyes after she got home and asked me to rub her shoulders while she told me nothing happened. I started keeping records. Screenshots. Dates. Her stories. Times. Every little inconsistency. Not for revenge, at least, not yet. Just for sanity. I had to prove to myself that I wasn't crazy. But I was still holding out hope. Hope that maybe I'd misunderstood. That maybe she'd snap out of it. That the woman I loved hadn't just stopped loving me. That hope died the moment she walked in, smiled, and casually told me she'd been on a date. But what she didn't know was that the man she had drinks with, he wasn't a stranger to me. Not anymore. Because I had already found his name. I had already seen his LinkedIn, his Facebook, his wife's Facebook. And in 24 hours, her world was going to collapse exactly the way she tried to collapse mine. But I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to rage. I was going to smile and say one more line. The hardest part wasn't the lying or the secrecy. It wasn't even the fact that she had the audacity to come home to my bed after sipping cocktails with another man. No, the hardest part was pretending I didn't know. That night, after she told me about the date, she went upstairs like nothing happened, took a shower, hummed while brushing her teeth. She even asked if I wanted to watch something together before bed, as if we were just normal. I sat there on the couch, still holding her coffee mug from earlier that morning, now ice cold. She'd never even touched it. The heart I drew in the foam had long melted into nothing, just like the woman I thought I married. I didn't go to bed. I stayed up, phone in hand, scrolling through the fake Instagram profile I created weeks ago, just to follow her mystery man's wife. Her name was Celine. She was a teacher, middle school science, from what I could tell. The irony? Celine had posted a happy anniversary photo 2 days ago. Her caption said, 12 years of laughter, growth, and loyalty. Here's to forever. Loyalty. I nearly laughed out loud. I knew what her husband was doing at the Marriott, and it sure as hell wasn't being loyal. And so, at 2:17 a.m., I did something I didn't expect to do. I messaged Celine. It was simple. I said, "Hi. This is hard to say, and I'm not sure you'll believe me, but I think we should talk. Your husband and my wife were at the Marriott rooftop last Friday. I have proof. I'm not crazy, and I'm not trying to hurt anyone, but I think we both deserve the truth." She didn't respond. Not then. I figured maybe she wouldn't at all. But she read it. And once she did, the fuse was lit. By the next morning, Mara was oddly cheerful. She made pancakes, actually sat with me, and asked about my plans for the weekend. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask if the guy she went on a date with had the same laugh as me, if he listened to her college stories, if he rubbed her feet the way she liked when her ankles got sore after long walks. But I didn't say any of that. I just asked casually, what was his name? Her fork paused. That was it, just a flicker. But I saw it. What? The guy you had the date with. You said it wasn't serious. So what was his name? She stared at me, then smiled. Curtis, come on. Don't be weird. You said you were fine with space. I nodded. Sure. Just curious. She didn't answer. She stood up, cleared her plate, and muttered something about laundry. By noon, I got a reply. Celine. 3 words. Please call me. I did. We talked for 42 minutes. She was crying by the 10-minute mark. By the end, we were both silent, both breathing like someone had pulled the floor out from under us. We exchanged screenshots, Lyft receipts, timestamps. She sent me a photo of the same shirt he wore to the conference he claimed to be at. It matched exactly with the man in the rooftop bar's online gallery. Same blazer, same smug face. And she told me something I didn't expect. He'd cheated before. Swore he'd changed. But he didn't. They never do. So we made a plan. Not for revenge. Not yet. But for truth. Cold. Surgical. Unforgiving. Mara had no idea the hurricane that was building behind the scenes. She thought she was in control. She thought she held all the cards. But I was about to show her what it feels like when someone turns the mirror around. And what she'd see would destroy her. Saturday morning, I watched Mara from across the kitchen like I was watching a stranger in my house. She moved like everything was normal, wearing the same oversized hoodie she used to steal from me in our early years, barefoot, humming that same Fleetwood Mac song she always played when she cleaned. But it didn't feel nostalgic anymore. It felt deliberate, strategic, like she was trying to restore a version of herself she thought I still loved. Too late. I already knew her backup plan had a name, a job, a married life, and a cheating habit. I already knew about the red dress she stashed in her gym bag and the second phone she kept in the glove compartment of her car, one of those cheap prepaid ones. She thought she was slick. She wasn't. I had already taken photos of the call logs, already backed up the texts. I can't stop thinking about you. He'll never know. I need your lips again. This wasn't an accident. This was a season, a strategy. And by then, I was done pretending. But I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to play the screaming husband. That's what people expect. That's what she expected. Instead, I smiled more, kissed her forehead when she wasn't ready, watched her carefully, like a man memorizing his opponent's every move before the final match. Because the plan wasn't to leave. The plan was to let her collapse under the weight of her own web. Celine and I had a quiet understanding by now. She wasn't out for blood, but she was out for truth. She had a teenage son. She didn't want him knowing his dad was a walking betrayal. So we worked silently. I started syncing Mara's burner phone to an old laptop in the garage she forgot existed. With the right app and a little luck, I could see everything. Texts, voicemails, even location pings. I felt like a spy in my own marriage. That night, Mara told me she was going out again. Just drinks with Amy, she said. Her best friend. The one I already knew hadn't spoken to her in weeks because they'd fallen out over something personal. I nodded like I believed her. She left in a rush. I waited exactly 22 minutes, then opened the tracker. Marriott rooftop. Again. She didn't even try to be clever. And that's when I knew. She wasn't just cheating. She was comfortable cheating. She thought I was weak, distracted, dependent. She believed I couldn't walk away. But I had something she didn't. Control. And I was going to use it. By 10:46 p.m., Celine sent me a photo. A friend of hers, one of those women who never misses a beat, was at the same bar. She'd recognized Mara immediately from Celine's screenshots. Took a candid shot from across the patio. Mara, leaning in, laughing, her hand on his chest. He was holding her drink. I stared at that photo for 10 minutes. Then I printed it. No words, just the image. And the next morning, I left it on her nightstand. I didn't say a thing. She found it after her shower. I heard her gasp. A long pause. The door didn't slam. She didn't scream. She just went still. Then, finally, she asked from the hallway, voice trembling, "Curtis, can we talk?" And I finally looked her dead in the eyes and said the sentence I'd been preparing for weeks. But not the one she expected, because this one would crack her open from the inside. She stood in the hallway, still half wrapped in a towel, clutching the printed photo with shaking hands. I could tell she hadn't expected that. Not the evidence. Not the silence. Not the fact that I hadn't confronted her the night before. No, what really rattled her was that I let her sleep next to me afterward. "Curtis," she said again, quieter. "Can we please talk?" I looked up from my phone, calm. I didn't even raise my voice. "I'm not mad," I said. "Just disappointed that you thought I was stupid enough not to notice." She blinked, mouth opening, then closing again like she was trying to find a version of this story where she was still in control. But she had run out of those. I watched the wheels turning behind her eyes, spinning through lies, excuses, and half-truths that used to work on me. They didn't anymore. "You said you wanted space," she tried. "You said we weren't working." "No," I said, "you said that. And I begged you to stay. I offered therapy. I changed everything. You changed phones." Her shoulders dropped, and for a second I almost saw guilt. Almost. But it passed, replaced with something colder. "It was just emotional," she said quickly. "We never." I laughed. I couldn't help it. A sharp, bitter sound that made her flinch. "You think I care whether you slept with him or not. You plan to. You lied to me for weeks. You came home smelling like someone else's cologne and told me it was lavender body mist. You looked me in the eye and thanked me for being patient. Mara, you didn't just cheat, you practiced for it." She sat down slowly on the edge of the hallway bench, the towel slipping slightly. She didn't fix it. Then she whispered the question I was waiting for. "What now?" And I finally gave her the line. The one I knew would end whatever fantasy she thought we still lived in. "I already spoke to his wife," I said flatly. "And I gave her everything." Silence. Not the kind that fills a room, but the kind that drowns it. Her lips parted, eyes wide, and her hands began to shake for real now. "You what?" "Celine," I said. She was very kind. Said she always had a feeling. She's planning to leave him quietly, wants to protect her kid. But I didn't make her do anything. I just told her the truth. Something you refused to give me. Her whole face dropped. Not just fear, humiliation. She'd been caught, yes, but worse, she'd been outplayed. And she knew it. She stood up slowly, as if trying to reassert control of her body, of the moment. "Curtis, wait, we can fix this." "I already did," I said. "I fixed it the moment I stopped trusting your words and started trusting the evidence." She stepped forward. "Please, let's talk, really talk. No defenses. No lies. Just us." But it was too late for just us. There hadn't been an us in months. Maybe years. I picked up my keys from the counter. I'm going out, I said. Don't wait up. She stood frozen, tears forming, hands gripping the photo like it was the last proof that this was all somehow a nightmare she could wake up from. But it wasn't. And when I walked out that door, I didn't feel rage. I felt freedom. Because the next step wasn't about exposing her. It was about removing her completely. And I had one more move to play. The funny thing about betrayal is how it turns everything silent. Not loud, not explosive, just still. That kind of stillness where you notice things you hadn't before. The click of your own breathing, the hum of the fridge, the way the dust dances in sunlight. That was my Saturday. I didn't go far. Just drove around. Let the air roll in through the windows while the storm in my chest stayed bottled. I didn't need to yell anymore. I had already won. When I came back late that night, she hadn't moved the photo. It was still on the nightstand like it was staring at her. The house was quiet, dark. She was in the bedroom, sitting cross-legged on the floor with her back to the wall, like a kid who knew they were about to be punished but had no idea how bad it was going to be. She looked up at me like she'd been rehearsing all day, like she'd built an entire apology speech in her head, hoping it could still fix something. I didn't let her say a word. Don't, I said. Whatever you're about to say, don't. She closed her mouth, looked away, and that's when I told her the second thing she never expected. I've already spoken to a lawyer. That landed like a punch to the ribs. She physically leaned back, blinking fast. Wait, Curtis, please, don't do anything yet. We haven't even talked. I didn't think. I wasn't thinking straight. That's the problem, I said. You were thinking straight. You planned it. You covered it up. You protected him. You risked our life together for a man who won't even answer his phone now that his wife knows. Her face twisted. You don't understand what I was going through. I felt invisible, like you weren't even with me anymore. You were just there. I was working. I was paying for your life. I was holding everything together while you were building an escape hatch with someone else's husband. She cried then. I didn't move. I didn't reach for her. Not out of cruelty, but because I knew it was the first time she'd ever had to sit in her own consequences. And I wasn't going to rescue her from that. But I hadn't come back to fight. I had come to end it. I'm not going to destroy you publicly, I said. That's not who I am. But you're going to walk away from this house. From the savings. From the car I paid off last year in your name. Quietly. Without drama. Or I hand over the texts, the recordings, the burner phone details, and your entire chat log with him to your employer's ethics committee. Her mouth dropped open. You wouldn't. You think your job at the counseling clinic won't care that you were emotionally manipulating your own husband while having an affair with a married man? You think the licensing board won't raise an eyebrow when they read what you wrote to him? You're a mental health professional, Mara. You built this illusion of integrity. Don't make me dismantle it. She looked like she'd just aged 5 years in 30 seconds. Like her world had finally tilted too far to keep faking balance. I'll leave, she whispered. You'll leave everything. She nodded slowly. That was the moment it finally hit her. None of this was going to end on her terms. She had played her game, made her moves, thought she was ahead. But now she was losing everything she thought she could manipulate. And I hadn't even raised my voice. She had underestimated me, thought I was soft, spineless. What she forgot is that quiet men are the most dangerous. We don't yell. We finish. The next morning, she was gone. No dramatic goodbyes. No handwritten letter. No slammed doors or teary speeches. Just silence, and the guest room half empty. A few drawers yanked open. Her side of the closet stripped bare except for a few wire hangers that clanged together like wind chimes in a funeral home. I stood there, waiting to feel something. Anger, relief, sadness, anything. But I didn't. Just a strange, numb clarity. The kind you get after surviving a crash and realizing you're still alive. Just bruised in places you haven't discovered yet. She left behind her wedding ring. Placed it on top of the coffee maker, of all places, like she knew I'd find it first thing. It sat there quietly, catching the morning light, mocking the 10 years we'd poured into a marriage that ended with burner phones and rooftop martinis. I didn't touch it. Instead, I spent the morning cleaning, vacuuming, folding laundry, boxing up her old mugs, her books, the blanket she always used to steal from my side of the bed. I wasn't doing it out of spite. I just needed the space to breathe again. Every object she touched felt like it still whispered her lies. Around noon, I got a text. Unknown number. I'm sorry for everything. I'm staying with my sister. I won't fight you on anything. I just need time. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I was moved, but because it was the first time she didn't try to shift blame. The first message in months that didn't include a half-truth or emotional manipulation. I didn't reply. Not out of cruelty. Just self-preservation. Celine messaged me an hour later. She wrote, "He's denying everything, even with the proof. But I told him I'm done. I'm not going to fight him for the house. Just want peace. Thank you for telling me the truth." I told her she deserved better. She said I did too. And in some odd, painful way, that exchange felt more genuine than anything Mara had said to me in the past year. Over the next few days, I started quietly unraveling what was left. Called the lawyer again. Told him we'd go through with the separation paperwork as planned, but that she wasn't contesting anything now. Switched our joint bank account to my name. Had her car keys disabled from the mobile app. Changed the passwords. All of it. Piece by piece. Like removing bricks from a wall she once built to hide behind. Then came the phone call. Blocked number. I answered anyway. It was him. I recognized his voice instantly. Smooth, smug, calculated. "Listen, I just wanted to clear the air," he said. "This whole situation got out of hand, and I think we can agree that nobody needs to escalate anything further." I didn't say a word. He continued. "She told me you're threatening her career. That's unnecessary. Let's not drag this into something legal." I waited until he ran out of breath. Then I said, flat and cold, "You were stupid enough to sleep with a therapist who took notes about everything. Now imagine how stupid you'll feel when those notes end up in a courtroom." Silence. Then he hung up. I haven't heard from him since. That's when I realized something else. This wasn't just a win. It was the end of something toxic. The first breath of real air after months of suffocating under lies. I wasn't going to chase closure anymore. I had it. But there was still one more thing I had to do. One final step to make sure none of this circled back. And I'd already started planning it. 2 weeks later, the house was quiet in a different way. Not like it was waiting for something bad to happen, but like it was healing. I started noticing little things again. The soft creak of the hallway floor at night. The way the wind rustled the blinds in the living room. The scent of fresh coffee that didn't come with dread anymore. I had space. I had peace. And for the first time in forever, I wasn't performing for anyone. I deleted the folder with all her texts and screenshots. Not because I forgave her, because I didn't need them anymore. The power they gave me had already served its purpose. What came next wasn't about leverage. It was about moving forward. Celine and I kept in touch, but not in a weird, rebound kind of way. Just two people who had crawled through the same wreckage and made it out alive. One day, she messaged me a photo of her and her son at a science museum, smiling, healthy. She said, "Feels like I can finally breathe again." I knew exactly what she meant. My lawyer filed the final paperwork. Mara didn't contest a thing. She moved into a rental 2 towns over and sent one last message through her attorney, a quiet apology, wrapped in legal language. I read it once, then closed the file. That chapter was done. I took a short trip by myself after everything was signed. Rented a cabin up in the mountains. Brought nothing but books, a pair of boots, and a notebook I hadn't used in years. I thought I'd write something deep. Instead, I sat on the porch every morning drinking coffee, watching the fog roll over the trees, and letting silence do what it does best, heal. I didn't miss her. I didn't miss us. Because I had finally realized the version of her I missed never existed. She was a story I told myself to survive the slow collapse of something I thought was love. But real love doesn't come with burner phones and lies dressed up as space. Real love is quiet, honest, and boring in the best possible way. And that's what I'm waiting for now. Not drama, not fireworks. Just someone who shows up, tells the truth, and stays. Until then, I've got myself. And finally, that feels like enough. So to anyone listening, going through something like this, wondering if they're crazy or too sensitive or overreacting, you're not. Trust your gut. Gather your peace. And when the time is right, say your one sentence. The one that ends the lie and starts the life you actually deserve. It worked for me. And I promise it'll work for you too.